on. Here we go. Video's playing. All right. It is Monday, May 3rd, 2021. My name is Jim Vessel. Welcome to Competitive Corner. I am joined today by Alex McDougall. Alex, how are you?
Doing great.
Great. Welcome everyone that is tuning in. Hope everyone had a good weekend. We have a lot to go through this weekend. Well, maybe not a lot of different subjects, but a lot to talk about a few subjects, I think. Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah, I had a great weekend. Played
Nice.
against Danny McDevitt from Mob Rules. That was a good game.
Sweet. On TTS?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No,
Nice.
I did not go to Alaska.
Well, I don't know where some of these guys are. Sweet. How did that game go?
It was good. It was Nids versus Dark Angels, and I lost by like 4 points.
Nice.
So Danny's a really
Nice.
good player, and Dark Angels are kind of nuts. So felt good about it.
All right, so a few things just before we get going, guys. Make sure to get your questions on the show. If you want to get your question on the show, please leave a comment in chat. You can email me at duplicitypaintstudio@gmail.com. Just put CompCorn in the subject. Or you can join the Deployment Zone TV group, which is on Discord. The links will be down below. That is a exclusive kind of content platform that we're also on in partnership with Winter's SEO and a few other content creators, including Play on Tabletop and a few other people that make some really great content. So make sure to definitely check out Deployment Zone TV. And they have a Discord where you can leave questions as well. So if you guys are interested in asking questions, or you can even tweet me on Twitter. I think I'm at Jim Vessel or at J Vessel. I should probably know this. I think
Killer plug.
I'm at Jim Vessel. So if you tweet me at Jim Vessel on Twitter, I can also answer questions. So we're happy to take questions. We're going to do a Q&A. At the end of every episode, we do a Q&A on the show. So make sure to get your questions in. I hope everyone had a great weekend. Obviously, we want to talk a little bit about the weekend's results. But yeah, I guess first off, before we get too deep into it, Alex, what are your impressions of the results so far? Kind of any initial thoughts before we kind of do a bit more of a deep dive?
Not a whole lot. It kind of ended up exactly as I thought. I think I even said like the top 10 will have 5 to 6 Drukhari, and then like a gun line that sneaks in,
Yeah,
which is exactly what happened.
right. Yeah, good evening, Corey. Welcome to the stream. Welcome everyone else that's tuning in. Make sure to say hello in the chat so we know you're here and living and not just like a bot from Russia, which we've had a few of. All right, so Alex, I wanted to start the show. I have some vinegar in me today. I've been well. First of all, last week I discovered the horrors. Like I've always had a Reddit account, and I definitely have checked out Reddit from time to time as far as like just to see. I know there's certain like Goonhammer used to post like their Monday stats there, so sometimes I'd check there. Obviously, sometimes there was little nuggets of value in the Reddit community. But in general, it's not a place that I actively post. It's more of just some place where I kind of creep a little bit. And then there's a few other subreddits for various other interests that I have that I do check out. But the Warhammer competitive Reddit is obviously one that exists, and it is a bit of a cesspool for the most part. And the first thing I did want to talk about is obviously last week we had the Drukhari FAQ. So what were your thoughts on the Drukhari FAQ? I think we talked about it. That was last week, right? I'm not crazy
Yeah,
on
just last
Tuesday.
week.
So, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts on the Drukhari FAQ before we get too much in the Reddit because that they're kind of tied together?
I mean, it essentially did nothing. It didn't even address the things that I thought it that they were going to address.
Right.
Like, there's some things that are considered powerful or broken, whatever word you want to use for it, and they were things that I didn't even really think interacted the way that I thought they intended them to. Like
Hmm.
the whatever the succubus, that everything that doesn't get to damage creates another attack.
Right.
And then if you have a weapon that splits it, it turns into 2 more attacks. I was like, oh, that's clearly not what GW intended. And same with the Dark Technomancer liquefiers not ever being able to wound the user. Those were 2 things that I thought, oh, those will be in the FAQ because they don't really act how we expect. And those didn't even get touched. That
Right.
FAQ was basically just like a
Errata. It
kindling.
was like typos basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, do you think we're gonna get another balance pass? And I'm sure we'll talk about it later a bit more. But
I have no idea. It's weird because like again, like we were talking about last week, like they're kind of their hands are tied. Like, do you nerf them now, and then all the new ninth edition codexes come out and surpass them, and they have to unnerf them?
right,
I think the problem is that I know it's been like a year now almost, but essentially it's really early into ninth that we've had our first like, oh, this is completely busted. Like I think they were more willing to nerf Iron Hands back in the day because that was the tail end of or eighth. Like we knew no other codexes were coming. Like okay, well let's tone it down to everyone else's level. Now, how do you tone it down like midway through a run with a bunch of codexes coming out?
right. Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think I talked to I was on the Art of War stream this morning with Richard, and we had a good chat about it. But I think we both prefer smaller incremental changes with more often than these kind of big massive FAQs that drop. So I'd like
Mm-hmm.
to see them do some tweaks around the edges, maybe a bump in radar points, a cleanup of some of the language, and then maybe just like an adjustment with just some of those combos that definitely seem like the extra two CP that they're getting for no particular reason. Just
Yeah.
seems like a complete oversight. Obviously, we haven't seen an FAQ for the Warzone book yet, so we might see some of that trip to which
Mm,
42 tax succubus get nerfed there.
that's
Um,
true.
yeah, so it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. I'm getting a weird bunch of lag right now, so I'm hoping it clears up. My upload keeps going to red, so hopefully we don't have any other issues. But
Okay.
I've had quite a few dropped frames. All right, so why bring this up? So Reddit, obviously, we've had a lot of what I would like to call, and not just on Reddit, but on various 40K podcasts around the community, and on some of the, Comp 40K in Facebook has actually been pretty good. They've been, for the most part, everyone is basically piling on and agreeing that that's pretty bad. But I think Reddit and a lot of other places, I've seen what I'd like to call Dark Eldar apologists or Dark Eldar truthers, and and these are basically people whose opinion is, even after all the data that we've seen so far. So first of all, this is the here's your prototypical Dark Eldar truther. They're going to have three things that they're going to tell you. First, they're going to tell you that we need more data, that there's not enough data. Second, they're going to tell you that Dark Eldar are fine and that the meta just needs to adapt. And third, they're going to tell you, well, it's a brand new book and people don't know the rules yet. And to all of you people who have this opinion still after this weekend, I'm going to say this. Shut up. Shut up. You're wrong. You're wrong. Just admit, like, you guys need to, like, look, no one is saying that we need to nerf the army into the ground, and no one is saying that there isn't some truth to those points. Sure, the meta needs to adapt a little bit. Sure, it's a new book, and sure, more data is always great. But if you can't, any competitive player or player that plays at a high level can look at the book as it is right now and objectively tell you that it is overtuned, it's too strong. Now, with all those things that you guys mentioned, like the lists adapting, and with like people getting familiar with the book, and potentially like the more data, we might see the win percentage go from a, what was it this weekend, 75% to a 65%. Even if it drops 10%, which is a massive drop because people get more familiar with the list, people start to tech for it a little bit more, that is still completely unacceptable. So this idea that like everything is fine, don't worry, just take more chain swords, let the meta adapt. Guys, you guys are being extremely dishonest, right? No one is saying that. No one is saying that Dark Eldar should get nerfed to the ground or obliterated. And I know there's often that fear, but I'm so sick and tired of people who can't seem to get over their own implicit bias and just say, you know what? Yeah, the book is overtuned. And there's these other factors like list needing adjustment. It's both. You can hold two ideas in your head. It's not that fucking hard, right? So on one hand, you have the idea that the book is overtuned, it's too strong. And on the other hand, you have all those things you listed that like the meta needs to adjust a little bit, right? List needs people need to be more familiar with the rules. A lot of it is like gotcha hammer, like, oh, I didn't realize that could do that. Oh, I didn't realize this. But in general, the amount of like Dark Eldar people that are like apologizing, pretending that everything is fine, it's like it's totally inexcusable. So people, to the Dark Eldar truthers and apologists out there, the people that are standing there saying that, yeah, people just need to adapt, um, you guys are just objectively wrong. That is not what we're talking about. No one is saying that the book shouldn't be powerful, and no one is saying that the book um, doesn't need time. People aren't going to get better at playing it, right? What we're saying is that even after all of that, it's still probably overtuned. And you can sit there and pretend that we don't have enough data. You can look at the almost 2,000 games that have now been played with the book at like a 70 plus win rate. How many more games is it going to take? 5,000, 10,000, 100,000? Like at what point are you guys going to be like, oh yeah, actually it is right? How much longer and how much longer are you going to give people to adapt? 6 months? 1 year? Like 6 years? Like when is it enough? At what point are you going to say, you know what? At this point, listers should be adapted. People would have learned the lessons, and we're good to go, right? When, right? But no, it's always the next week. One more week of data, guys, right? One more week of people adapting. One more a month of people learning the list, right? Like it's never just like, hey, you know what? Yeah, honestly, guys, that it is overtuned. It is broken. The data shows it. Not me, not my opinion. The data shows it. So let's start talking about what needs to happen, right? Let's how do we adjust this book without ruining the book, which is ultimately what we want. We want a balanced game, right?
Yeah.
So that's just like my Dark Elder rant. And Alex, I'll pass it over to you. And here's the last thing I'll say. I'm fired up. I'm not actually angry that the book is overtuned because at the end of the day, I'm not worried about it. I know that the book is going to be fixed. I know people are gonna. I know like GW is going to eventually address it, whether it's in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. We saw it with Iron Hands. We saw it with Yunari. We saw it with Castellan. We saw it with like a lot of the lists, Blood Angels, when they had way too many stratagems that were super cheap and doing all sorts of nasty stuff. So we've seen this. There's a pattern of GW recognizing that these lists are overpowered and then acting. So I'm actually not worried that this is not going to get changed. What bothers me is the people in denial, the people that are pretending, like gaslighting us, gaslighting high-level competitive players that can objectively look at this and say, this is too strong. Just trust us. We know because we've been playing this game forever and we're smart and we're not, we can see these things. Trust us. And we're looking at the data as well. And people saying, no, 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 guys. No, it's just a meta. Like, don't gaslight us. Like, we know what we're talking about. And I don't mean me. Don't take my word for it. Forget what I say. People, there's much better players, much better than me, that can tell you the exact same thing. There's a reason that, a lot of people are saying, well, John Lennon and Nick Nanavati and those guys would have been finished top anyways. Yeah, but the thing is, the reason they actually went and switched all to Dark Eldar is because that's what good players do. They switch to the best book. So if you think it was just by
Hey.
accident, if you think it was just by accident that they all took Dark Eldar, that they just so happened to be planning to run Dark Eldar and all the other books are competitive, no. If you go look at, I've talked to John, I've talked to Richard, they all in that little frat house they have down in Florida where they play Warhammer, they've been testing against Dark Eldar, White Scars, Eldar, Chaos, all sorts of lists, and time after time after time, Dark Eldar there is just emerging out of it. Like they're like, you know what? After all our tests, building lists to kill Dark Eldar, the best thing is actually just more Dark Eldar. That's actually the best list. So for everyone out there that is in denial, just shut up because you guys are dishonest and you're not telling the truth and you're being super biased on this, right? And again, it doesn't affect me personally. I've been stuck in Vancouver for a year and a half now, and I'm not playing any tournaments. So if Dark Eldar are busted for another 3 months and I get to hear all the whining on the internet, it doesn't really bother me. But what bothers me is the dishonesty, the people saying that, oh, like everything's fine, there's no problem here. Anyways, that's my rant. So,
Yeah.
Alex, any thoughts?
Scary part. Well, yeah, the scary part is that John is not a Dark Eldar player.
No.
Like Mark has been playing AdMech forever. I played Mark at LVO like 3.5 years ago, and he was playing pure AdMech then. So we're talking about somebody who has been, I think, routinely in the top 100 in the ITC, like year after year, playing his favorite list, playing a list that's super refined, and then John hopping over to Drukhari in the last like 2 weeks. I don't think he's ever played them before, other than maybe like some random games for streaming, and going and winning the biggest major we've seen in the last year and a half.
Yeah.
That's not okay. There is like when they talk about pilot over list, it absolutely is a huge thing to swap armies. Like even the best players, they're at that point they're operating off of mechanics. I understand the mechanics of the game really well, and I can leverage that into good gameplay. But that doesn't mean he's going to play that list as well as somebody who has been playing Drukhari the last however many years, right? He just took good mechanics into the best list and then just went and won like the biggest thing we've seen since LVO.
Yeah. it's just infuriating to me because like, look, I wanna agree with like I wanna agree with those people and say, you know what? Every new book that comes out, there is an adjustment period and there is a period where people need to kind of learn the list. But here's the thing, guys, that goes both ways. So
Hmm.
just as people are getting better at learning Dark Eldar, people are building better Dark Eldar lists,
Yeah.
right? So the best
We,
list has still not been discovered. The best
yeah.
combo of traits and warlord traits and build and selection has still not been discovered. So it's not just a one-way street where lists get weaker over time. They actually get stronger too. So it's like if you're already starting at this, 10 steps ahead, and then as much as we're going to catch up, Dark Eldar are also going to get better. They're going to fine tune it. You're going to find even tighter efficiencies, even more weird combos and interactions, right? This isn't a thing where it's like in a vacuum where it's like now the best Dark Eldar list has been picked and now everyone has a year to kind of break it down and adjust it. No, the Dark Eldar lists are going to change and there's like 6, 7 probably really strong builds in that book. And if you build to counter any one list, you're just not going to have the tools to play like a take all comers list, or it's going to be very hard, or there's only one or two lists in one or two books that have those the ability to do that, right? And that's just not a healthy game, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. That mentality of like, oh, we just need to adapt. That's a very first world thinking. Like those of you that have codexes with real rules, you might be able to adapt. Those of us playing like Genestealer Cult, I can't adapt to Dark Eldar. I can't adapt to anything. Like my book is ass. What am I supposed to do? Like if you start if you have one singular list that's running at a 75% win rate and it's so good and you have to skew super heavily towards that, if you're on basically anything but like the very top level armies, you're just going to screw yourself against everything else.
yeah,
Like, hey, I finally made a list that can beat Drukhari, and I get smashed by Marines, which are unfortunately for me 50% of the meta, and Death Guard and Harlequins. Like, if the list is that strong where you have to put all your eggs into one basket to beat that list, you just hose yourself for everything else.
yeah. It's
I
it's
would,
pre- it's
I,
pre- it's pretty frustrating to listen
if I
to.
was, oh sorry, go for it.
No, I was just gonna, it's just pretty frustrating to listen to. I'm just like, guys, just be honest. Just say it. Like no one's gonna hold it against you that you play Dark Eldar. If you can admit that they're too strong, they need tweaks. Just be honest about it. Don't pretend that everything is fine because that's so dishonest and it just really bothers me.
Yeah, yeah. If you're not like White Scars or Harlequins or Admech or like Dark Angels or something, and I was going to a GT tomorrow, I would probably ignore Drukhari. They would be something that I just can't really cope with, and I will build to beat everyone else, and I will try and go 4-1, and I will lose to Drukhari on top table or on day 2 or something like that. That's essentially what I'm going for.
Yeah, I mean, I played probably a half dozen games against Drukhari, the new Drukhari, and like with my chaos, and I've tried lots of different lists. Now, lists that I think would do well against like in a general meta, like that would be good take all comers. I could probably build a chaos list that could beat Drukhari. Like I don't I know I could. I just don't think it's gonna be good against a lot else. And even then, it's like 50-50. Like my best chaos list against Drukhari, it's still a 50-50 coin toss. Like who gets first, what's the mission, what's the table terrain, all these kinds of things. Like it's not like a and that in general, when you tailor lists, it usually is like not 50-50. It's like you just steamroll, right? Like if you build a competitive list that's built to kill one thing, then usually you steamroll them. With Drukhari, even my best list, chaos list, is like 50-50.
Yeah,
It's like a coin
yeah.
toss.
The tiered list that I built specifically to deal with White Scars because whatever 4 months ago White Scars was the boogeyman. That tiered list has like a 98% win rate against White Scars.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's absurd, and that's because I built it specifically to do one thing, and it happens to be good into a lot of other things as well. But it was to snipe Marines, and Marines are like 50% of every tournament you'll ever go to, so it worked out. But yeah, I don't know. And another thing that we're describing here is you're saying 50-50 against Drukhari in general,
Right.
not 50-50 against Drukhari being run by Sean Naden, Nick Nanavati,
Yeah.
John
I
Lennon.
mean, I probably don't even have a chance
You'll,
there.
no, you'll just get slapped to death.
I played against like I mean it was TTS, but I played against a Drukhari player who's like super green, and he like beat me. I lost 78-77. And it was like I played my ass off, and the guy just was
Mhm.
like he made so many mistakes and he still won. By turn 5 the guy still got 5 raiders flying around charging. Like the raiders literally are killing Death Shroud Terminators because they have 3 strength 7 attacks each, like that hit on 4s. Like whose idea was it to give a transport like that kind of offensive power? he's got 3 raiders and 1 single death shroud doing 9 strength 7 attacks. Like,
You know,
are you guys
if
mental?
you give a
With AP,
Carnifex,
and they're AP1 and then AP like 2 on 6s. Like, are you kidding?
yep,
Like,
if you give
it's
a Carnifex only guns, like you take away its all of its normal combat options, a Raider is better in combat than a Carnifex.
it's ridiculous. Yeah, like you know, and you know, look, I think they also play the missions really well, which I think is a big problem. And I think one of the bigger problems in the game right now that I'm really not happy with is I actually don't like that we've gone to a single mission set. I think it really stagnates. Like, I think there was a really benefit in having things like Maelstrom, ITC, Nova missions, WTC, Adepticon, like having all those different mission sets. It created a little bit more of a varied meta because certain lists and certain armies might be more better in those types of like in those mission sets. But now because we're in a single mission set, it's kind of like what's the best army in this single mission set, and that just becomes the best army. Period. It's not like it's not based on that mission set. So I actually think I don't think it's a great thing that we're in a single mission set, and I'm really hoping with the new chapter approved and field manual whenever we get it. Outside of the points updates, we also get a full rewrite of the secondaries. I'd say like I think we talked about this last week, but like 60% of the secondaries are absolute garbage. Like when was the last time anyone took any sort of psychic secondary? So it's
They're all
just
crap.
yeah, it's just not good. Like I was looking at arm like I can't believe witches are 10 points. Like it's mental.
I mean, I can kind of get the witches being 10 points because if you ever catch them out of combat, they just disappear.
Yeah.
Like they are T3 with a 6+. Like guardsmen will light them up, but the problem is that they have the no escape, so you probably will never catch them out of combat.
Right. And I
Which
mean,
is
yeah, and like they're weak, but like they have 85 point like armor suits that fly them
yeah,
around.
they're just blenders in
Yeah.
combat too. I feel bad for. I guess that's the other thing that makes Dark Eldar so strong is that they have so many things that they do well just as like a bonus.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you need these raiders. You really do need these raiders to get your army around. Also, they'll dumpster most people's heavy armor like without even
With
breaking
free
a sweat.
rerolls, built-in rerolls.
Yeah,
And
we
oh, did
have
we
this
mention
unit.
that unlike every other army in the book, they can carry any troops across your entire army? So like I can't
Mhm.
have Space Marines and I can't have White Scars and Dark Angels and have my Dark Angels Rhinos carry around my White Scars, right? I
Yeah,
can't do that
and
in
your
any other army in the
Rex
game. Is there any
and
other army in
your
the game where I could have a Dark Angels character in my White Scars detachment and still get all my Dark Angels rules? No. Oh yeah, only Drukhari can do that for some reason. No reason at all. I can have literally a Cult of Strife Succubus in a Dark Technomancer's detachment and still get my full Dark Technomancer's rules. And the only thing I lose on my Succubus is like a very small illusion trait. Like just the rules writing is so inconsistent, and the combo stacking in that sense also just means there's so much abuse, right?
yeah. I mean, I'm playing Tyranids. I don't even know what transports are.
I mean, exactly. But imagine you could just have like you can mix and match hive fleets within a single detachment and then
Oh
not
God.
get any downside. Like that's
Yeah, I
essentially what
know.
Dark Eldar get to do.
Yeah, goodbye actually having a Kronos detachment. I just have 6 Kronos Hive Guard sitting in my Kraken list
Yeah.
at the back with no support.
What's up, Nick? How's it
Oh,
going? Thanks for joining. Hammer, we will readdress faction agnostic secondaries. Cody, yeah. Okay, well, Cody, that's actually a good point. I'm going to talk about adapting. Yeah, so. Okay, so rant number 2. All right, guys, I need to talk to you about the word gatekeeping. Okay, so I'm going to look at the camera here because I'm going to be very serious. There is, we play a game called Warhammer 40,000. And in this game of Warhammer 40,000, there are certain minimum requirements. You require dice to play the game, models to play the game, hate measures to play the game. You require a rulebook. We require you to have an army list, right? We require you to have a, let's see, what else is required? Generally, you're required to paint your models, which require brushes and paints. These requirements to play the game are not gatekeeping. I'm so sick and tired of people using the word gatekeeping as like it's some sort of like rule that we've imposed the community to keep people out of the game. The word gatekeeping has a connotation of exclusion. And what it means is that I, as a gatekeeper, I'm trying to purposely exclude some segment of the population from playing, purposely, maliciously. And so as a result, I'm putting requirements on the thing that I'm doing. So only like my friends or the rich people or whatever can play. That is not gatekeep. That is gatekeeping. Gatekeeping is not having models that are Wysiwyg. Gatekeeping is not having painted models. Gatekeeping is having to show up with a legal army list. That's just the rules of the game. And if you don't like that, that's on you, but then you can choose not to play. No one is stopping you from showing up, from playing at home with beer cans, tuna cans, dollies. You can do whatever you want. But when we're talking about competitive tournaments that have certain minimum requirements that we implement to guarantee the enjoyment of all the players of the game, so that it's fair, so that the game is clear, those kinds of requirements are not gatekeeping. Stop using that word the way that you're using it, because that's not what it means. And it's really, really annoying that I keep seeing anytime someone's like, yeah, we require painting requirement, or we require you to have your models be WYSIWYG. That's somehow gatekeeping. That's not gatekeeping. That's not the like. It's just turning that word is turned in such a farce. People often use it with the hobby when they're referring to like, oh, we want to gatekeep women out of the hobby, or we want to gatekeep certain groups out of the hobby. No, they're like, you can't just say it's gatekeeping because you just have a painting standard at your event. Yeah, guys, guess what? Not everyone can afford to paint. Not everyone can afford to buy models. Does that mean we're gatekeeping the game because we don't want poor people playing? No, that's not at all. Tournaments cost money to attend and to play in. Does that mean it's gatekeeping to have a ticket cost? I mean, I'm just so sick and tired of the amount of people that are throwing around this gatekeeping word like it's like a pejorative, when it's just really referring to basic requirements to play the game so that it's clear and fair for everyone. And I had a lot of discussions about it with people in the last little while, and it's just really frustrating because it's like, look, it's an expensive hobby. I get that. When I started the hobby, I didn't have a lot of money. I would, had to save up. I'd have to buy one thing at a time. Stuff would come out that I wanted, and I couldn't play with it or couldn't buy it because I couldn't afford it. And I didn't ever sit there and think, oh, because I can't just show up to my GW with a Gundam robot from my closet and use that instead of the new model for my Bloodthirster, people are gatekeeping me because I'm poor. Like that's not what it is. Gatekeeping would be like me and Alex being like, hey Alex, we're gonna make a rule that purposely excludes a group of people just for the purpose of excluding that group. Or we're gonna try to implement some sort of thing that like maliciously or intentionally excludes a certain group. That's what gatekeeping is. So if I want to create a group where I'm like, only players that know this much background information can come to my event, that's gatekeeping, because that is not part of the game. That's not part of the hobby. That's not something that you sign up for, right? That is but there is these bare minimum requirements, and I'm just so sick and tired of people using this word, throwing it around like it's like anytime you're like, no, we want to have a certain bare standard. We want to have a 3-color minimum. Your models have to be WYSIWYG and they have to be current and on the right bases. That's not gatekeeping. That's just literally like wanting to play the game by the rules. And if you think that's gatekeeping, this is not the hobby for you. And just like, yeah, go away. Anyways,
Rant 2.
that's my second rant. Sorry, I was like,
I'm
yeah.
I'm curious as to where this rant came from because it's not something I've experienced very much. I don't go on social media much because
So
it
okay,
is
so this
usually
is
just a waste of time.
this is where it came from, and I'll tell you guys the exact conversation. Someone asked if they could use the old Bellicor, right, model just on the new base.
I know where this is going.
Someone was like, "Hey, could I use the old Bellicor model on the old base at a tournament?" And I was like, "Well, ask your TO." I was like, "Ask your TO first." That was the first thing I said. Ask your TO, but understand that when this model gets re-released with brand new rules, those new rules are proportional to the new model. So it's got much more powerful rules, right? Right. And if you guys have seen the rules previews, you're going to know that it's a much more powerful model. And because of the fact that the rules are better, the model's a lot bigger, which makes it harder to actually hide and play on the tabletop. So in tandem with its new powerful rules, the model's also bigger, which makes it slightly worse on the tabletop because now you can't hide it as easily, right? It's got bigger wings, it's got bigger profile, etc. And the base is bigger, etc. So if you want to play with the old Bellicor on a big base, I think that is modeling for advantage. And that old model is meant to be used with the old rules. And now you have a new model that's meant to be used with the new rules, right? Now, they're like, well, what if I convert him to be the similar size? I'm like, okay, well, if you can get him to have the exact silhouette or similar silhouette, which is literally
Similar.
3 times as wide, 3 times as high as the new Bellicor, and you show that to the TO, I'd probably be like, yeah, go for it. But just taking the old Bellicor, putting it on a 100 mil base or whatever the new one is, and saying, it's a GW legal Bellicor model on a proper base size. So now I'm going to use it at the event. and me saying no, you can't use that, that's not gatekeeping. That's
Yeah.
not me gatekeeping you and you being like, well, I can't afford the new model, so you're gatekeeping poor people out of the hobby. No, it has nothing to do with whether you can afford it or not. That's just literally like that's like you're modeling for advantage, right? And whether you like it or not, I wouldn't allow it. Now, maybe your TO will allow it, or guess what? If the tournament that you want to go to doesn't allow it, just don't go to the tournament. Email the TO, if he's like, no, you can't do that, you either change your list or you just don't go to the tournament. That's simple. You can play at home, you can play at the hobby shop, you can play in your garage, you can play in the grass, you can play in the bushes, you can play in the ocean. I don't care. Play with whatever you want, wherever you want. But when it comes to the tournament, where we're trying to ensure competitive event and like a fair event, we need to have certain minimums, and then that includes making sure people aren't modeling for advantage. And that is not gatekeeping. I'm not trying to keep it from you. I'm saying here very simply, this is what's the requirements, and it's no one's forcing you to go to the tournament. You're not being excluded for anything. So yeah, it's just like and stuff like this, and then people are like, oh well, it is gatekeeping. I'm like, okay, no, but like you're not using that word the right way, right? Like then at that point, where does it stop? Where does it stop,
Yeah.
Alex? Like, can I just show
We
up
should
with
move on because I've wound you up again.
can I just show up with like my army of like Legos and be like, this is my I can't afford regular Warhammer, so and if you don't let me use this, it's gatekeeping. You're trying to keep me out of the hobby. Like where do we draw the line, right? Like it's such a slippery slope, and it's just so frustrating to hear people.
You can afford Lego, you can afford Warhammer. Let's be real.
Okay, I need a break.
What's our next one?
That's it.
Our,
That's all I
our
got.
next
I
talking.
don't know what your thoughts are. If you have any thoughts, I gotta take off my shirt.
No,
I'm like all sweaty
no,
here
I understand.
and fired up
I
and
think
hot.
I think with the gatekeeping thing, yeah, it's got to be a mentality of like exclusion for the sake of like I guess arbitrary things, like things that don't make any sense. Yeah, no one's gatekeeping you on the models. You got to play. Usually, what happens is the reason that people like you and I get pissed about this is because we've been burnt on the tabletop by somebody using something incorrectly, like somebody using orc bases still on 25s instead of 32s.
Right.
Like an eighth, that was a big deal because if you put it in correctly in right a tight formation, you could get like 4 ranks deep of orc boys
Right.
instead of like 2. That's a massive difference. You just quadrupled or doubled the amount of power that you get out of your orcs. We're not gatekeeping you by saying, hey, you need to put these on 32s. We're just telling you, please follow the rules.
Right.
So
Yeah, like when you go to a Magic the Gathering tournament and you have to have the actual cards. Like at home,
yeah,
you can just literally play with a land and you scribble Black Lotus on it and throw it in your sleeve and you're like, that's my Black Lotus. When you go to a tournament, you can't do that. You need to actually own the physical card and it needs to be in your deck. That's not
yeah.
gatekeeping, right? That's just the rules of the tournament. And so to claim that that's some sort of gatekeeping is just it's just so disingenuous and it's so dishonest. And what it does is it's like it creates this victim mentality. Like everyone is out to try to get you to stop playing. No, like dude, I want as many people playing this hobby as possible. I want as many people at the tournaments as possible. I want to try to include as many people as possible. But I also have to maintain a bare minimum standard so that the game is fair and consistent
Yeah.
and people don't get an unfair advantage, right?
And
That's
a lot
not
of
gatekeeping.
times,
That's just trying to create a fair and even playing environment for my players. And I'm not even a TO. So like, so if you don't like my opinion, you can shove it, but that's just my opinion.
these things have to be in place not for us, but for newer players as well.
Yeah, and like
The
a lot of people, especially in this community, like I know there has been some gatekeeping, especially around like people like there's like been lots of like I've heard stories of like women or people of other sexes or other genders or whatever. I've heard lots of stories about like people trying to gatekeep from new players. Like they're like, oh, you're new, like we don't want you. I'm like, no, like bring me the new players. I want to include as many people as possible. I want everyone involved. Women, men, donkeys, dogs, monkeys, whatever. Bring them all in. Let's have them all playing Warhammer. I don't care. But it's not gatekeep. I still want the monkey to show up with the proper Bellicor model. I don't care that he's a monkey and he has no money. That's not my problem, right? He still has to show up with the proper Bellicor model. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah.
Like he can trade bananas for it. I don't care how he gets it. You can steal it, right? He's gonna be one of those like thieving
The
monkeys
thieving monkeys. Yeah,
that steal stuff. Anyways, and then the other thing is like what it does for me is it actually like I don't maybe this is like an offside reference, but it like it devalues actual gatekeeping. So it like dilutes it like desensitizes people like because the word now just gets thrown around so much, right? When there's like actual gatekeeping going, people tend to ignore it and tune out because they're like, oh, they look at it and it's like everything's the same. It's like
mm-hmm.
there's no more like there's no more like power in the word, right? They've you completely taken that word and it's lost all meaning. So now when there's like actual gatekeeping that's bad, people are just like ignore it. Like when I hear the word gatekeeping now, I just tune out because I'm just like, oh, it's just another person using it as like a pejorative or a way to like basically like impose their like their like moral outrage on something. They're just saying, oh, like if it's
Yeah.
something they don't like, oh, it's gatekeeping. I'm like, no, guys, that's not.
Yeah, rather than someone actually being an asshole to the one woman that showed up to their event
Yeah, like being
instead
sexist,
of
that's gatekeeping because it like
yeah,
literally like you know what I'm saying. Like there's actual gatekeeping, but like
yeah.
asking people to show up with like proper models is not, and having things on the right bases is not, and having Wysiwyg models is not. That's just the game that we play. And I'm sorry that you're a new player or you have an old model or the belt that GW doesn't have the Bellicor available, right? I'm sorry, right? But like that's not. I'm not gonna like change the rules just because of some like extenuating circumstances. And at the end of the day, and I go back to various things. Ask your TO, and if your opponent's fine with it and you're playing at home, you can do whatever the fuck you want. You could play with your Barbies if you want. Like it just doesn't matter. That's totally up to you. But in certain settings, like tournament settings, there needs to be that minimum standard because it's not just about you. It's about your opponent as well. It's about their enjoyment. And if
Yeah.
someone shows up to play me with proxy models, models that are not Wysiwyg, models that are not painted, models that are not on the proper base, or that are old models that like an old greater demon on the wrong base size, that's gonna actually hurt my enjoyment because you're now I feel cheated. I feel like you're taking advantage of me, right? All right.
Okay, on to more positive subjects.
Hey guys, happy Monday. Welcome.
Warhammer fans.
Shane thinks that me being league commissioner has gone to my head, and that has not been healthy for me. So probably very true. Now I'm trying to deal with this kind of stuff. Seth wants me to gatekeep the rant, which I guess is now happening. And Archon Drazar wants to actually play Ocean Hammer. And speaking of Ocean Hammer, there is actually a thing called Cruise Hammer. If you haven't heard of it, it is a basic. I wouldn't call it a tournament. It's basically a Warhammer cruise. It's happening in. It's not. I think it's next year at this point. It's been moved to 2023, 2022 in
I would
Texas.
assume.
I'm going. We're actually going to have Dan Miner, who's one of the organizers and a local hobby hero, and also my league co-commissioner, on a future episode of the Best Overall Show to discuss Cruise Hammer once I kind of get my life sorted a little bit. So we will be discussing that. And while I'm discussing it, I just want to remind everyone tomorrow, Politics and Plastic, we have Eric Kakesi. We're going to be talking about like Elo and Glyco ratings, implementing those into the 40K competitive scene over the ITC, and why there's so many good things about those. So he's done a lot of homework on that. So make sure to tune in tomorrow at 6 p.m. And then Thursday, Best Overall Show at 6 p.m. again. It's just me and Kozka this week. Hopefully he's got his sound issues fixed. But that's it. All right, my rants are done. Okay. I don't know if I asked you this, but did we talk about Warhammer Fest predictions?
We did before the show.
Okay. Any? Do you want to repeat those at all for
Yeah, for
the
I
public?
think for me, the predictions, it's more to like hopes, I guess, than predictions. I just want a laid out schedule for 40K. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people right now with Drukhari are having a bit of a like state of despair. Like if you're playing one
Right.
of the bottom lists, you just know you're going to lose. And there's that hope of like, well, maybe my Codex is coming and I can actually get to throw down against Drukhari again.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm still trying to calm down. Okay. Do you want to talk Dallas GT? Anything we want to cover from the Dallas GT? Obviously, congratulations to my friend John Lennon. Really, really happy for him. Look, guys, as much as we like to rag on Drukhari being really good, and all like Sean and Nick and all these guys taking Drukhari, I still want to give huge props to people that won those events. It's not easy to go 8 games and winning every game. He played some excellent opponents. He did an amazing job with those games, especially the last game. I think a lot of people look at that game after Mark cleans up 4 or 5 Drukhari players, 2 of the best in the world in Nick Nanavati and Sean Naden. Imagine your mindset going into that game against Mark where he still gets first turn again. And like
Yeah.
you got to really have a bit of a like you go into that not feeling great, right? Like, hey man, this guy just cleaned up 4 of 2 of the best Drukhari players in the world. He's won 4 out of 5, like 4 games in a row against Drukhari. He goes first. Like, imagine what your mental state is after that. Like, it's probably not that optimistic. But John played his game. He stuck with it. he did what he had to do, and he ended up winning that game. And so huge congratulations to John. Really, really, really proud of him, and once again proving the caliber of player he is. So yeah, that's and obviously congratulations to everyone else that won. For the most part, there's a few people I wouldn't congratulate, but we won't talk about them on the show. All right.
I want to give a quick shout out to let me see here, Kyle Malmborg. Don't know who he is, but he got 13th with Blood Angels, and he only lost twice, and one of them was to Sean Naden. And like basically everybody else in the top 20 is like exactly who you would expect. No, I don't mean people wise. I mean like list and army wise. It's just like Dark Eldar 10 times, whatever, and then it's like Harlequins, White Scars, Death Guard, like all the ones we would expect, and then this one madman with Blood Angels that just killed it. So
Yeah.
props to him.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, Corey, congrats for coming in 15th. I mean, that's huge too. I know a lot of people only care about the top, top 10 or top whatever, but to even go like 6-2 at an event like that is still very impressive. Or 5-3. To end one of those events in like the top 20, it's very impressive. You're talking 100 plus players, right? The top 20th percentile basically of players, and that's impressive. Like nothing to be ashamed about. Like and only one person can win. And there's a lot of matchup luck sometimes involved. Sometimes even if it's the right matchup, it's the wrong mission. You know what I'm saying? Like even if the matchup's good, sometimes the mission can be bad. So a lot of, I don't want to say it's luck, but definitely it can play a factor at the edges, on the edges. Like those small things can give you definitely an advantage. So any other
I think
shout
that's
outs
about
from
all
this
I had
weekend?
Yeah, Corey for taking Necrons to 15th.
That's great, Corey.
I had for me personally, because that's just who I am. I've seen this name before. Again, I don't know who it is, but Eric Chad with pure Genestealer Cult went 5-3.
Nice.
And came like in the top 50.
I don't know.
Which
Okay, so
as
a layman, what is like, and I know this is probably like a very long answer, but like, is the big issue with Genestealer Cult the reason they're so bad? Is it a points issue? Because like in my head, I'm like they should actually play the game pretty well. They got lots of units. They can take board presence really early. They got a few things that can pop out and kind of nuke things. So like, what is the big issue with Genestealer Cults? Like, what's the fundamental flaw of the army right now? Because on paper, they haven't changed a ton. It's obviously the Muscle Beach Aberrant bombs got nerfed a little bit, but like it seems to me on paper, like are they just too expensive? Is it too fragile? Like it seems like they still have lots of units and lots of like different tricks and tools that haven't gone away. So what is the big kind of thing that makes them so bad in this edition? Because it's not quite apparent to me.
There's about 4 things that I can summarize really quickly. One, somewhat points. Genestealers, more than any other army in the game, are super, super character driven. And all of those characters went up 5 to 10 points, which I used to run like 12 characters. That's like 120 points that I've lost out on, including the general increases of everything else. Like I realized that everyone's characters went up 5 or 10 points, but people were only running like 4. So like 40 points is not 120 points. The other one is that they're extremely command point reliant, and they just don't have as many command points as they used to.
Right, because you said like 18, right? So people used to start with like 18.
I used to have 21,
yeah,
and be having CP regeneration,
and still run out.
And I would still run out by like turn 3. It was absurd. The other issue with them is that the way you wanted to build your army in 8th was built right into the Codex. You want 3 detachments because Genestealer Cult are locked, so you can only have 1 of each character type per detachment. You can't take 2 Magus. You can only take 1. So if you want a second Magus, you need to have a second detachment. So now you're hurting your command points even more.
Right.
So
because you wanted multiple different detachments.
Yes, there's even a stratagem called Cult Psyche, which you put it on a Magus, and then he gets a +1 to cast depending on how many Magus like other GSC Psychers you have in your army that are near him. But you can't do that anymore. You're not taking 3 battalions and starting with 4 command points. And then the other one, the one that started even before 9th, is that Marines were just built to kill Genestealer Cult.
Yeah.
They have Auspex scan, so you can't deep strike them anymore. They've got infiltrators, so you can't deep strike attack them anymore. They've got vehicles with minuses to be charged. They had Overwatch at a 4+ on Iron Hands. Like the entire Codex was just you just couldn't beat them.
Yeah.
So yeah, they just got like absolutely crushed. Essentially, GSC right now has like 4 units. It's got Magus, Acolytes, Ridge Runners, Neophytes. That's it. And yes, Aberrants got pointed out of relevancy
Yeah.
completely. Like you look at what they can do, and in eighth, it was like crazy. They were the hardest hitting unit in the game. Now they're like, I don't know, they're pretty good. Like a White Scars Vanguard veteran unit just is better, straight up.
Yeah.
Incubi are better, but they cost like twice what an Incubi does.
Yeah. Okay, Alex. Let's move into the Q&A section. And just a reminder, guys, if you're interested in getting a question on the show, there's 4 ways to do it. First, you can leave a comment on the YouTube show. So once the show is saved on YouTube, you can leave a comment in the comments below, and we will bring it for next week's episode. You can join the Deployment Zone TV Discord. So go to Deployment Zone. It's called deploymentzone.tv. Deploymentzone.tv. Just go there and check it out. You can email me at duplicitypaintstudio@gmail.com, subject comp corner, or you can ask it live. So anyone that is watching right now, if you guys have a question for me and Alex regarding anything competitive, Q&A, meta, that kind of stuff, feel free to throw it in the chat right now. I will try to scroll up. There's a few questions from previous that I will try to get to, but that's going to be the way to ask questions. So make sure to get your questions in, guys, and we do compile them all, and we'll be answering them every week on the show. So let's get to our first question. So from Red Tooth, he's got a question. So there's obviously been a lot of talk regarding the 75% win rate of Drukhari. And I guess his question is, what is an acceptable win rate for an army in competitive 40K? Obviously, getting everyone to exactly 50% is impossible, but what is considered too good or too bad? So what, in your opinion, what does that look like?
I've put a lot of thought into this, and I have had some discussion with the Falcon as well. And it's 45 to 55%
Yeah, and I
is
would
ideal.
agree.
Like a little bit worse than 50%, a little bit higher. That's hard to get to. I think that is the nice thing about that is 45 to 55 is probably attainable.
Right.
That is an attainable goal. And I honestly don't really think we ever actually want purely 50%
No.
because I think the game becomes a little bit stagnant. We don't want things to be way worse and way better, but like having some armies that are a little worse and some that are a little better makes things a little bit entertaining. You get
Right.
storylines of like, oh, they punched above their weight because, you know, they're a 46% win rate army. But 75% means that against the lesser armies, you might as well just not even play the game.
Yeah, so like I would say the same, and the thing I would say as well is not just that it's 45 to 55%, but that every army, maybe not every build, has a like, you don't want every list to be able to beat every other list. Obviously, there is a little bit of rock paper scissors, but you don't want there to be matchups where it's like no matter what army you write, Drukhari just always beats X army. It's like before the game even starts, right? So you want there to be builds within each army that can be competitive against every other army. Competitive, right? So with the right, the right tools, with the right gameplay, with the right mission, they do have a chance to win, even if it might be like slightly less than 50% or a hard chance. So it's not only just about getting balance across factions and trying to get the win rate down across all players, but you also want to make sure that the armies have various builds that are viable, multiple builds that are able to achieve that 55%. So I might say have a demon army that is say 55% against Drukhari, but it's like a 45% against Marines. So that's okay. It's not, we don't want 55% against everything, right? We want 55%, again, depending on the list that you're playing. I'm going to take one from the chat. Corey Schultz asks, what codexes do you think will be announced tomorrow? Codices? Doesn't matter.
I mean, I already know a couple. Not really a guess.
Well, do you know that they're going to be announced tomorrow, or do you think it's going to be on Thursday?
Well, I don't know the date of announcement, but over this.
Oh, tell us the...
Well, here's where we find out that the person I've been talking to was wrong, but it's going to be Sisters and Orcs.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's going to surprise anyone because of we've seen the models.
Yeah.
As of like, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago, that might have surprised someone that we knew that was coming. As far as I know, I believe GSC is also soon.
Right.
Which is exciting for me.
Mm-hmm.
I was told it was...
There was a little tease, GSC tease in some of the recent articles.
Yeah, I was told it was AdMech, Sisters, GSC, but now Orcs look like they've slipped in.
Yeah.
So it might have been that they were... I don't think GSC is getting a model rework. No, obviously, they're like a brand new line and look great. So I think it might have been that they were expecting GSC as like a placeholder if they couldn't get the orc range done, because who knows what they're shipping and all the rest of the manufacturing is going to do. But it
Yeah.
looks like they probably got the orc line ready, and now orcs are going to come in instead of GSC.
Yeah, so my guess would be the same. I would say um sisters and orcs for sure. I think we'll probably get at the minimum one the next supplement announced. In my ideal like utopian society where Games Workshop is the best company ever, they'll just tell us which books are coming out for the rest of the year. So that's not going to happen. No,
No.
AdMech will still be May. I think it'll probably be pre-order. I think they even said pre-order May 11th or something. Like not this
Yeah.
week,
I
but the
think,
following week.
yeah.
Is that?
It might have even been this weekend. It might have been the 8th or something
No,
like
because
that.
they didn't
What day?
already announce the pre-orders this week, so it'll probably be pre-ordered on the May 15th. I'm thinking,
Okay.
which is sorry, the following Saturday. And then maybe release on May 22nd. I think that's what they said. But yeah, I'd like to see at least one more supplement, and then I'd like to just see the roadmap for the rest of the year, which I know GW doesn't do, but I can wish. All right. So next question from Chris B on from Discord. He says, "Well, Peter's not here because he couldn't make it in the end, but this question is how much do the stats swing, and what is reasonable to expect in moving meta? I would imagine it's possible to calculate standard deviation ranges over time to understand what is statistically normal and what are outliers. Um, so I guess this question is really around um, the stat swings, and I'm not going to answer like in win percentages. And what I will say is that, and this is just from me looking at stats, especially last year, or sorry, in 2019, was that oftentimes you had two factors. You had kind of like like I'll use Chaos Demons as an example. When you took my and TJ's games out of the Chaos Demon faction in 2019 season, I think they're at like a 49%. And then when you added us back in, they're at like 56%. So
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing is you're gonna end up with some outliers. If you have really good players that are doing really, really well with a certain faction, they tend to push a faction's win percentage up artificially past what it's like normal. But I think if you can kind of account for that, what I find is that the average actually stays fairly consistent over time. Most lists do actually perform in accordance with their averages. You don't see big swings in win percentages across a book. Like once it's kind of settled into its win percentage, that's kind of it. Like it doesn't, unless there's like a new book or new list or new meta change, you generally don't see these like you wouldn't all of a sudden see like a Tyranid list that's been, Tyranid faction going 50%, and then all of a sudden for no particular reason, they just start winning. What if they're playing at 50%, they just kind of stay there. Again, unless there's like say like a really good player that picks them up and maybe is just dominating, playing lots and lots of games, they can sometimes artificially pull it up. But even then, you're often countered by the copycats that don't do that and kind of bring it down. So it's.
Yeah, I don't think the stats change much. When a book first comes out, is usually when it'll do its very best, and then it will dip slightly.
Yeah.
People thinking that things are going to adapt for Drukhari, they'll go from 75% win rate like they did this weekend, and they'll probably like settle at 71% if nothing changes, which of course is still far too high.
Right.
Yeah, like saying that a book will suddenly change its win rate is kind of like saying that, oh, the thousands of people that have been playing this book for the last 3 years somehow missed something.
Yeah.
Like it's probably someone found all the juice that's left in that demon book. There's nothing new coming out of it.
Yeah.
The only reason they got a win boost is because of ninth, not because somebody like figured something out.
Yeah. All right. From the chat, Hakan asks, he couldn't help but wonder how Wysiwyg is. Okay. I couldn't help
I
but
think
wonder
he means
how.
the
I think you meant
acronym.
what Wysiwyg is. So Wysiwyg
Yeah.
is an old. So this is as far as I
You
remember. I don't know.
gatekeeped him. You gatekeeped him.
Yeah. Um.
He doesn't know the term.
No, that's okay. So from what I remember, it was a term coined around the day of back in the day when people were making websites, and it was this like term that I know I learned it back in the day of like GeoCities and like back when like you used to have to code HTML, but it stands for what you see is what you get. And the idea of having programs where you did programming and what you saw is what you get, that was a very novel concept back then, because you used to be able to actually like build your website in frames, for instance, and the frames that you saw is what you'd actually get on the real website. That's when I remember really learning the term, was from like old programming and web development, where like it would literally, essentially what it meant was like you would get a one-to-one translation of what you were working on in like web design. That is from what I recall, but obviously it's now been adopted. I'm just gonna search up, see if there is like a etymology for the word.
Yeah, I
Um,
got it specifically from 40K. That's the first time I ever heard it.
oh yeah, so here we go. I'm not wrong. In computing, so it's from computing. Wysiwyg is an acronym for what you see is what you get, and it's a system in which editing software allows content to be edited in a form that resembles its appearance when printed or displayed as a finished product. So such as printed document, web page, or slide presentation. So so this is where like it seems kind of funny. If you think about Microsoft Word is Wysiwyg. You type words on the screen, and it shows like the words on the page like you'd see them. But back in the day, like in the 80s, that's not how, like, you used to type programs in like MS DOS, like Microsoft
Yeah,
DOS, and what you typed in DOS didn't correspond to how it actually looked on the printed page, because DOS is like its own. So that was not WYSIWYG, for instance. And so with like Windows, the first like implementation of like Windows, that was like when you saw things that were WYSIWYG essentially. And that was actually a very novel concept in programming, because back in the day you used to like literally program code to put in the letter A, or program code to like do something very simple. And that would not look like what you got, right? Now it's all kind of behind a curtain. But anyways, that's a little bit of history for you on
yeah.
the
And
etymology of the word.
for 40K, they're just meaning that you're actually showing what's on your list. Where you
Yeah.
bring out your list and you're like, my captain has a storm shield, a plasma pistol, and a sword. That's actually represented on the model. Because people will do that. If it's just like a collection of crap on the model and it doesn't represent what's on the army list, you could just kind of make it up as you go. Like, oh, it has this. Like, oh, it's
Right.
very convenient that it has this for this specific fight, isn't it?
Yeah. So basically, yeah, it just means that your models physically represent the war gear options that they actually are equipped with. So if I look at your model, I think you just said this, so I don't know if I'm
Yeah,
repeating it, but if it says it has a plasma gun, the model actually has a plasma gun. So I
yeah.
can look at the model quickly and know the weapon options. I'm not like, oh, that plasma gun's actually a melta gun, but I have a plasma gun model. So generally it's not accepted, but there are small exceptions, like with like for instance like Space Marine bolters. The magazines are so small, and like no one really even knows half the difference between the three different like magazine types, that for the most part that's something that people generally don't. They're not like, oh, that's the wrong magazine type on your Space Marine bolter, so that's the wrong ammunition. That's in my experience. And then there's certain obviously war gear options like relics that it's really hard to model on. Like if I have like the Tome of Malkador and I don't have like a literally a physical book on my model, that's usually not an issue. So all right, next question. Let's take that from the page. On the subject of gatekeeping, is there a danger that if 40K goes down the esport route, competitive play becomes the new default and it becomes harder to get into the hobby, both from a cost of entry and community pressure? Well, first of all, I don't think that it's going to become the new default. I still think that 95% of Games Workshop customers are going to be non-competitive, narrative players, collectors, modelers, hobbyists, painters. So I'm not worried about that. I think it's one of those like slippery slope arguments where it's like we're gonna pick this like very extreme, um like, I just don't think that's gonna happen. We're not even close to that, I guess, at the end of the day. Um and so I'm not too worried about that, to be honest. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Alex.
Oh no, it won't. The um if workshop or 40K was to become large enough that you could actually support an esport, the demographic of who's playing competitive and who's playing casual and competitive, it wouldn't change at all. All it would really do is the casual players might actually watch,
Yeah.
but nothing changes.
All right.
I've
Bods
played this game for
asks.
20 years.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. I think it's kind of like one of those like, hey, this is like a fake fear that we're gonna kind of like get people riled up to, that doesn't actually exist. So Bods asks, do you think AdMech is gonna have as strong as a book, if not stronger than Dark Eldar? I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, I think you're gonna lose a lot with like the introduction of the core keyword. So a lot of maybe the reroll jank on vehicles. I think the vehicles will get worse in general. Just that's what we've seen across the board, because they've lost a lot of the ability unless you're Blackheart Drukhari. So, um, but I do have a suspicion that we're gonna get, and then maybe some of the like more abusive stratagems we might not see. I think obviously like I think priests will probably lose some of their defensive ability with like the 2++, that kind of stuff. Fight twice has been nerfed basically across the board in a lot of books. But I think they'll have a lot more strength in other areas that'll allow them to play the missions a lot better. Um, whether I guess the two questions are: A, do I think they're going to be stronger than they currently are? I think they'll probably be around the same, just different. Do I think they're going to be stronger than Dark Eldar? That's hard to say. I mean, I'd just be speculating. I don't know what your thoughts
Yeah,
are.
I've heard some less than encouraging rumors about how strong they are. Um,
Like,
so
like too
that
strong or not strong enough?
too strong. But maybe that's okay if we're all hitting that. It makes me feel really bad for Necron players that have been left behind. Where like if the rest of them are like this, if the rest of the books are
Yeah.
Dark Angel, Drukhari, New Admech, Sisters, I'm sure are going to be bananas as well. Like that makes me feel really bad for Necrons. But anyway, um, for me, yeah, like I just hope that they don't turn them into like the brain dead gun line where you're like, hey, look, all your Cognus last cannons are 3+D3 damage, and you shoot like crazy.
No, but they
Like,
are.
hey,
Are they 3+D3 damage?
they are, but
Yeah.
it depends on how efficient they make them for shooting, right?
Yeah.
Because that's they are bringing some things in line already. Like we've seen the data sheets for the Cerberus Raiders being 2 wounds instead of 3, which is a massive hit. And maybe they can get rid of that bullshit stratagem that lets them fall back when they're charged,
Yeah.
which makes
That's so
like
stupid, especially because you can use it while they're in combat.
yeah, they're just a completely fearless unit. Like, oh, here's a line that you can't interact with. Okay, bye. I move farther than you can charge. That sucks.
Yeah.
Like it's just so bad. But if they just yeah, I hope that the book is dynamic. I hope that they're not just turned into a pure gun line. I hope they make like Sakaran Ruststalkers good. I hope that they are generally around the same quality as Drukhari.
Yeah.
But
Um. Yeah. I'm interested to see, and like we'll see what they do with the Canicals. Um.
yeah, the
I
canonical
am a little concerned though the way that the game's going with Dark Lances and these last cannons, everything going D3+3. Like, it's really. I know everyone was saying at the start of the edition, like, oh my god, vehicles are gonna be so good. They can shoot in combat. They can like, da 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 da. And now it's like vehicles are just non-existent. So I kind of feel like the game is actually going towards this more like it's almost like you either go like vehicles are basically obsolete in a lot of ways. 3 wound infantry with these Cognus, 3 to 4 wound infantry is like getting obsolete with all this like D3+3 last cannon jank. So it's like, are we going back to like plague bears, like 1 wound infantry? Like, what is the, you know what I'm saying? Like, where's the meta going here? Like, is it back to like T4 1 wound infantry that can just like where you shoot a last cannon in it and yeah it dies, but like it's only like a 10 point model versus a 50 point Terminator? Because a Dark Lance kills a Terminator just as easily as it kills a Plague Bear, and Terminator is 50
yeah,
points.
the problem too though is I'm not even sure what the answer is because you look at a lot of these armies now and they just have this like built-in incidental like complete horde fuckery anyway. Like, oh, I can't handle well these last cannons or Cognus last cannons or Dark Lances, so I'm gonna go Horde. And then you play into Dark Angels, and they're like, yeah, but I've got 9 attack bikes that put out like 50 bolter shots on the move, well advancing turn one with
Yeah,
full rerolls. And I've got a Terminator squad that just happens to have like 8 Stormbolters in it. So there's another like 50 bolter shots with AP, and the Talon Masters all put out 20 shots apiece on the move. Like, okay, so the hordes aren't the answer either.
right.
I don't
Alex,
really
you've
know where we
like
go.
drifted onto the left side of your camera. Like you're very off center right now. I don't know if you can adjust your camera or your body.
I can just move.
Okay, great. All right.
I was leaning.
S. I don't know how to pronounce this. S for dragon,
Sea
right?
Dragon?
Sorry.
Sea Dragon?
Sea dragon. Oh yeah. Okay. Never mind. I'm not leet. I guess I don't understand leet speak. Would a higher level of competitive esport gameplay also need more fixed maps and missions? By fixed maps, I mean predetermined runes, sculpts and positions, tree shapes, heights and positions. Yeah, I mean, I think that we already have that with the WTC right now. We've seen that the introduction of these very set maps that are specific to missions, like when you look at the TTS map setups for the WTC, not just the TTS, but the real life map setups, each of the 8 tables for the WTC for each mission set has its own set of maps. So we're talking 54 different maps basically with terrain. So it's eight maps per mission, 6 missions. I think they have more than that missions, but a minimum of 54 different deployments essentially in maps that have set movements, set maps, set distances, and that's like uniform. So I think that's already happening, and we're seeing it at places like the WTC. The question is will, you know, I would like more of that. That like, I hate player place terrain. I hate like inconsistency. I do think the WTC is a little bit too aggressive on the terrain. Especially with like books like Dark Eldar, like the fact that you can basically bunny hop raiders around the WTC tables without ever having them in line of sight. Like raiders are big models in real life, and they have a lot of pokey bits, and that should be actually a disadvantage. But right now with like a WTC table, it's not because of the fact that like they can just basically hide behind all sorts of pieces of terrain.
Yeah, like the WTC terrain makes Demacarons like the best model in the game.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Um, yeah, I think, like you said, we're already moving to that, and I think that's the way it has to go if you were to go esport, because um, you just don't want anyone to get burned by bad terrain at some point. Like, it's another thing that you're allowed to plan for. You're like, oh, that's what the tables look like. I will build my list accordingly, and I will
Right.
not have any surprises along the way. We're basically trying to get it where we've removed all randomness from the game except for the dice.
Right.
There's the most known quantities possible to make the decision making of the player feel the most rewarding and be the most stable.
Right. Yeah.
Um, yeah,
I agree. Um, Corey Schultz asks, how long do you think it will take for GW to make changes? And then what do you think is a reasonable time frame for GW just armies up or down? So regarding Drukhari specifically, look, I'm in a few underground 40K groups. I know that there are people from GW, like I know Mike Brandt has seen the data. So I know there is that, and I know Peter has basically been emailing GW with the data pretty like regularly. And there are people in the community that are in conversation with them, whether it's regarding these issues or I at least have a line to Games Workshop. So I would be very surprised if no one is aware and they're just completely oblivious to it. So I do think they're getting the information and they're understanding that there is something going on here. I think we probably won't see anything until I'd say for Drukhari, at the minimum, I'd probably give it another 3 weeks minimum. It seems to me Games Workshop likes to make sure that if we see anything at all, it'll be 3 weeks. Alternatively, if we see like say a chapter approved announcement or a field manual announcement in the previews this week, we might not see anything until after that because that's obviously going to potentially bring with it new secondaries, new missions, and they might want to hold off until the new secondaries and missions are in, and then the meta settles there. So we'll see, but I would say I'd hope that they make it within 6 weeks of the book, especially with this much data. You know, if the data was like few and far between, I'd say maybe longer. But here's the thing, like this is kind of what I was talking to Richard Siegler about today, which is like I don't think anyone's saying go in and like carve up the book and just totally destroy it. But there's probably like a half dozen minor changes. CP on the Triple Patrol, Dark Technomancers, the Cult of Strife Succubus, the uh what else?
the mix and match,
The mix and
just being
match,
able to
like
put
the like just
anything
a
anywhere.
clarification and just cleaning up of the mix and match on things, and then Raider points. That's 6 right there. I think just those changes, small tweaks. So like maybe bump Raiders up 10 to 15 points, and then just fix all the language on the other stuff. And I think even just that will have a huge difference. And it's not groundbreaking, game changing stuff, right? That's fairly minor changes. I still think they'll be incredibly powerful even after all that. Because and then we can sit and wait and see, and then after another 2-3 months, make further tweaks. I'd much rather them apply little patches than come in heavy handed and kind of just try to destroy the book like they often did. Like, do you remember that FAQ where they basically nerfed all 4 deployment abilities? And they're like, oh, it's not fun when you can start Alpha Legion cultists 9 inches from your opponent and charge them turn 1. And then 6 months later,
Mm-hmm.
they're like, here's a Space Marine book where you can start Raven Guard Centurions 9 inches in front of your army and charge them turn 1.
Yeah,
Like, okay, cool. Thanks, thanks, Games Workshop. You guys literally went out of your way to nerf all these armies that could do that, and then gave that ability back to Space Marines like 8 months later. Well, it was more like 2 years later, but you get my point.
yeah. I mean, my hot take is that they're not going to change anything other than maybe like some actual wording
I think they
issues.
will. I don't think
I
it's
don't.
yeah. I mean,
I think we've got the July 2021 chapter approved. I think Sisters, Orcs, GSC, AdMech, Drukhari, Dark Angels, I don't think any of those are getting points changes because their codex will have only recently come out. I think only the armies that haven't had anything yet are going to get points changes. And I don't think they're going to change anything. I think they're just going to keep allowing the codexes to roll out and let things balance that way. The problem is that we're so slow right now. We're on codex number 5 or whatever. Like if you exclude the like 9 marine things, normally we'd be at like what a codex a month or maybe every 3 weeks. Yeah, so we would already have like.
I remember I think the first year of 8th, we had like almost 2 codexes a month for the first like outside of the first 3 months where they were still doing like Dark Imperium, here's Death Guard. But then once they got into the groove, like I think around November, it was like one at the start, one at the end, one at the start, one at the end. It was like 2 a month, boom, boom, or like every 3.5 weeks. Even if it was, I meant sometimes 2 in 1 month, but like it's 1 a month, like you'd skip it just the way that it would. But it was every like 3.5 weeks felt like a codex was coming out.
Yeah, because if we think about what happened in 8th, it was 1 complete year and then another 6 months to LVO. So like 18 or 19 months. And we had every single codex except GSC, which I'm definitely not still bitter about.
You got a whole new model range though. You can't be mad.
Sure I can. That was the year I missed out on the LVO top 8 by 2 points. And I was the only one without a codex.
Yeah.
At this point, we shouldn't have 5 codexes. We should have like 13.
Yeah.
And if you have 13 codexes, this Drukhari book doesn't seem so bad.
Right.
Like again, like I said, that's why I want the the Warhammer Fest reveals to give us an outline of what's happening, because that gives you hope. Right. Oh, it's coming. The new codexes are coming. Because right now we're just sitting here like, I guess it's Drukhari doom and gloom forever because no one's getting a codex.
Yeah. Like, I don't think I could see them making some changes to like some of those 6 changes that I made. I think that's like optimistic if I get all 6. I think we'll get like 3 out of 6 of those maybe, and then they'll probably hold off. And then if they do say do a points raider a points update, it'll be like raiders are 5 more points, and you'll be like, okay, well, why did you bother? Like, who cares? That's like literally that's like 25 points. That's like 1 less Silith or whatever.
Every little bit of something.
That's like 1 less, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. It just feels like totally like ineffectual. Like, I think they really need to go up like 10 to 15 points to actually like not only to actually affect the army build, but actually to make them feel like they're slightly better costed. Because even at 95 to 100 points, they're still incredible. For what they do. All right, so almost there, guys. Almost last few questions. Born Again Manchild asks, a lot of people are going big on this is the best time for 40k, but do you think we peaked in 8th? I mean, it's hard to say. We're so early in 9th edition. Like, it feels like it's been a while. It's almost been a year. I guess July last year was when 9th edition dropped. So it's almost been a year. We're 2 months away. But like from an actual, if you take the time out, as far as the actual maturity of the edition, as far as like releases and books and stuff like that, it's very, very young. It's very, very early. So we're still basically in year 1, year 0 as far as I'm concerned. I don't think we'll be at the point where we should be for 2 years, right? And I'm actually curious if that means they're going to delay the. I mean, I don't know what 10th edition is going to be like, but if it's a 3-year schedule, I could see a scenario where we're still getting books out in the year that like 10th edition gets dropped at this rate.
I think they'll delay 10th.
Yeah,
because they're still going to make money off of 9th. And they don't have to push 10th out. They can just continue to make money off of what they're producing right now. Yeah. I would say we are not in a particularly great version of Warhammer right now, but not because of GW's fault. Right. Like, obviously, I'm not going to say GW is faultless. They've certainly made some errors. But COVID is out of their hand. The reason 9th isn't great right now is because we've got a snail's pace release schedule. The best 40k I've ever played was right before the 8th edition re-release of Marines.
Agreed, and only because I was winning at that time.
Legitimately, though, even if you look at the stats, I'm pretty sure the best army in the game was at 57% win rate, and the worst was like 42.
Yeah,
which is pretty fucking good. That was probably
the most balanced the game's been in a long time.
And you'd go to tournaments and you'd see everything. Who's going to win the event? If Jim's not there, who knows?
Yeah, back when I was actually good at Warhammer, and now I'm bad. All right, last question. Cody is asking, he's considering painting up a couple models in sort of a 16-bit style like Square NES games, SNES games. Fun challenge or nightmare? I mean, I don't know, dude. I don't even know. That's concept-wise, I have no idea what you're talking about. Sounds like I've seen a Borderlands style, kind of like cell shaded style. I've never seen like an 8-bit paint job, and I don't know how easy that would be on models. That could be very difficult. Any advice on where to start? No, man. This is a competitive podcast. I don't know anything about painting.
My
But if you
suggestion
tune
is
in on
don't.
Thursday, we
That
have
sounds like
renowned
terrible
painter David
time.
Koska on, and he can probably answer your question. All right, and then adaptive subroutine. Last comment, and Corey says the Castellan meta was like 6 months. Yeah, but the Castellan list was not winning 71%, 75%. It was like 60% at its height, and there was lists that beat it quite easily. Like my Plague Bear list, I literally didn't care about the Castellan. I was like, cool, you
Yep.
kill the whole Castellan kills like 4 Plague Bears a turn, and then the Wyverns would do nothing, and then I would just nuke it off the board, and just take the
Yep.
board.
That was the same
So
with my list.
and my
I
core
never
demon
lost
prince would pop out
Castellan
and
ever.
just give it an old whack, or it would just die instantly, like one or the other. It was always one of the two. So
Yeah, the Castellan list was very like it was very good, but it was very skewed,
yeah, and you could
and it
wrap
kind
it
of
with like Yunari lists used to destroy it. Orc lists
uh,
when those came out, like with the Smasher guns, those took it down quite a bit. So there's lots of lists out there that actually did well against it. Um, it was
the
still
Drukhari
very
list
very
is
good.
so balanced. It's so balanced. Like it will shoot you. It'll shoot your strong stuff. It will scoop you off objectives. It will like shred you at medium range. It'll hold you back. It'll tie your stuff up. It can just do everything. Whereas the Castellan was just kind of like, can you deal with a Castellan? No, I guess you lose.
Yeah. All right, guys, that's the episode. Alex, any final thoughts?
No, I think this was pretty comprehensive.
All right. So, guys, make sure to like and subscribe to the show if you're enjoying the content. We are available on all the regular podcasting apps: Spotify, Google, Apple, Podbean, some Podcast Addict. I don't really know some other ones. Make sure to follow us on Twitch and subscribe on YouTube. Leave some comments below if you're liking the show. And just a reminder, stream schedule goes up on my Instagram, JimboV_paints, every Saturday. This week we have Erica Case on Politics and Plastic tomorrow at 6 p.m. And then me and David Koska on the Best Overall Show this Thursday. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Jim. This is Alex, and have a great